and welcome to Innovation in Cybersecurity, hosted by Fulcrum Equity Partners. We recorded this panel on November 11, 2020, as a part of the St. Louis Startup Week, an annual celebration of the St. Louis entrepreneurial community. This session features 4 cybersecurity experts discussing the current landscape and innovations in the cybersecurity space. More information about the panelists can be found at the end of the video, and information about our hosts, Fulcrum Equity Partners, can be found at www.fulcrumep.com. Please enjoy this recorded version of Innovation in Cybersecurity. The panelists did a fantastic job, and we think viewers will be able to glean many valuable insights.
I think a great first question that we can start with is, what current trends are you all seeing in the cybersecurity space currently? Who would like to go first?
Sal, I'd be happy to start if that's okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we're seeing is it's no longer a matter of if, but when. We saw last year that the U.S. electrical grid was compromised. We saw this year that there were several different compromises around the utilities. Most noteworthy was a water company out of Greenville, North Carolina. But the point is that it's becoming very, very obvious and evident that you're going to be hacked, and you have to understand what you can and can't do. Being able to get in and secure what you have, understand how things have been compromised, and then how to ameliorate that is really what people have to be thinking about. We also saw earlier this year, Frank, you had mentioned, healthcare, that healthcare is no longer off limits to the criminals, to the cyber criminals. They are currently, hacking and doing all kinds of issues around the world. And we actually saw that somebody was, we saw a death result from that kind of activity in Germany. So this is playing for real, playing for keeps, and I think people need to understand that. And so they're coming to companies, to consultants, to a variety of different people to try to make sure that they're doing everything that they can in order to secure their activities. And it can be an enterprise, a utility, government office, and so on. So,
yeah, I'll just add a few things. I'll add a few things that we're seeing. Is one thing is there are more attacks, and they're coming from all angles. They're obviously ransomware and breaches and data leaks and these phishing attacks where they're very targeted now. They get entry through certain people. They're coming in through your IT vendors. So there's just a lot of places now with the proliferation of cloud, mobile, remote workforce. There's just a lot of different places where these bad actors are gaining access. The other thing I'll say is some of the old infrastructure, cyber infrastructure, is not working anymore. It's old, and they've figured it out. So the whole tech stack of, there's new technologies emerging that, from our view, is quite complicated. So it's hard to manage, which brings to another big trend is the lack of people and resources to manage this for companies. Some of these technologies are great, but they're complicated, and some of them are hard to manage. So just a lot of different things going on right now. And with COVID and the remote workforce, that's opened up a whole new world of potential problems. So, there's just a lot happening right now, and that's why there's a huge increase in spend. So,
yeah, I think that everything is moving toward combined solutions for cybersecurity solutions. Which encompasses the multiple cybersecurity mitigation measures and in multi-cloud environment, like you said. And there's a need for cybersecurity features, just like the systems or APIs that enable the immediate attack mitigations when attacks are detected. And as you know, that there are a lot of serverless technology which enables the cloud-based business and everything, and those serverless technology application will be increased, like accelerated very much, and by year 2024, I had some research that saying that most of the companies which is providing multi-cloud environment services will be there. So it will be more common, situation. So as new APIs are used, and more vulnerabilities will be added to the environment, and which will increase the possibility of zero-day attacks, and which is very serious. And we should be prepared for all those situations, I think.
Thank you for that. I think Frank brought up a very good point of how we've all been impacted by COVID, and with the numbers that we're in the U.S., we're hitting records on a daily basis now. Can you all speak to how COVID has really impacted the cybersecurity space?
Well, I can give
Sure. Go ahead,
I'll give you one good example. I mean, people now obviously working at home, so people have been racing, for infrastructure to protect those people at home, because they're now accessing your network from different places. They might even go into, Starbucks for an unsecured wireless access. So the places where the bad actors can get you, they have expanded. The other thing, I'll just, one good example, we're an investor in a company that's one of the leaders in the phishing world, phishing with a P. But these people have gotten very targeted. They can now blend, they call in and you're not there. They can find out where you are. They can go to social media and find out some information about you and what you like. So then they'll target a very specific email to you. You're sitting at home and they'll say, Mary, your payroll's due Friday. We don't have your current information. And Joe, the HR guy who they found the real name from LinkedIn. So it all looks very real. So the bad people are really using social media and other points of information, are really gotten sophisticated to do very targeted attacks. And people at home, and sitting at the kitchen table, it's a whole different environment. So just one example, I think that's really kind of exploded. And we saw obviously the Zoom problems early on when that was being adopted fully. So that's just a few examples that I'm seeing from COVID.
Yeah, definitely. Frank, I agree. When you're working from home, there's so many more places for people to attack. Keep in mind that you've had years to patch and years to fix the network and be secure when you're on site. You're now off site. You probably have a device that either isn't regularly patched or may never have been patched. It might be your own personal device. You're working on a network that is remote. You mentioned going to Starbucks or whatever. It's really a tremendous challenge to try to make sure that everything is secure. Not impossible. And so, again, I think people have to really take this seriously, understand what options are out there, and then try to apply the best technology, the best services, the best capabilities to the problem. And then as far as the social engineering, the phishing, again, I think that people have to recognize it's not an if, but a when. You're going to get these requests, you're going to get these emails, you're going to get these things, and you just have to enter every email or every request with a healthy dose of skepticism. And if you don't know, hopefully you have an expert somewhere that you can ask, is this for real? So really it's partly, applying the right technology, but also applying the right training and education to the workforce itself.
That is right. I think that the situation of using web, internet and web browser, because the browsers will be talking to not only inside the traffic, but the outside traffic. So when bad actors access your browser, because your web browser will communicate with many other devices in the internet. So there will be a lot of holes and vulnerabilities. So should be very careful, and practices of being safe using practices important, I think.
Each one of you all, in responding to the last question, brought up either phishing or some type of vulnerability. With that being said, how can companies protect employees and their critical information from external threats?
So I'll get started. I don't have a great answer for that, Sal. Sorry about that. I wish I did. Again, I think that the social engineering piece, the fact that people are willingly giving up their precious information, is a problem. You can lock down a network all you want, but if somebody is willingly going to drive through that and present your information, that goes back to training the individuals. And I think that some of the things that, for example, John was talking about earlier with the deep packet inspections may assist in that, just trying to identify some bad actors and seeing whether or not they're in your network or are going after you. But on the individual basis, that's a very difficult thing to address. On a larger scale, you can bring technology to bear that is available today to really lock down data from exfiltration. And so we're not seeing as much of that as we are, this individual independent hacking and phishing.
Yeah, I just add a couple things. I mean, obviously, use of encryption, two-factor, authentication, which seems to be gaining some, but a lot of people still don't use it. I mean, there's a lot of basics that people still don't do. I mean, just basic patch management, just basic upgrades of your apps. There's a proliferation of apps out there now. I mean, I don't know what the number is, but a lot of companies might have 50 to 100 different cloud apps. And they have, the app security space has its own problems, but just some basic blocking and tackling that people just don't do. I'll talk a little bit about the security awareness testing. I mean, that has now become a pretty big space now, where all companies should have some sort of program around security awareness testing, where you're training each employee on what not to click on and bad URLs and all those kind of things. I mean, every company should have that and have some sort of formalized, product or service that handles that for the people. But the other thing I'll say, there are called MSSPs, which are outsourced managed security providers. So if you're a small company, don't nearly have the manpower to really put in an infrastructure, I would highly recommend, outsourcing your security to one of these MSSPs who have put together all the related technologies and endpoint and all the other things you need. The bigger companies, they build it themselves and, spend a lot of money with all the technologies. But if you're a small SMB type business or middle market, you don't have a CISO or a security operations center or people like that to resolve some of the issues, then I would highly recommend outsourcing to a quality firm that has put all those pieces together for you.
Go ahead, Sal, please.
So Frank, you did just bring up how there's been a proliferation of cloud-based apps in the organization. What challenges do you all see that this cloud-based app exposure and wireless network bring to companies' privacies?
Yeah, I'm not, I just know there's a proliferation of them. As a matter of fact, you'll ask some big companies, they don't even know how many apps they have and you know what versions they are and have they been patched, those kind of things. So I was just reading an article by Veracode, if you're familiar with that company, but it said half of the application security flaws remain unfixed within 6 months. So there's a real disconnect with the application development world, which is let's get these apps out, and versus the security part of it, which is whoa, slow down. We need to get some of these flaws fixed. It's quite incredible to me that we have such a problem. So then you multiply that by 50, 100 apps, you have tremendous exposure just in some of the applications you're using. So, due to and y'all have an iPhone, I mean, they're upgrading their apps, every day. But still, there remains a good number of security flaws in those apps, but there's just a real disconnect with the development world trying to get these apps out as fast as possible versus the security side, which is keeping them tested so these flaws are addressed quicker than 6 months. I hope that kind of addresses your question there, Sal.
Yes. Ron or John, would you all like to add anything?
Yeah, the one thing I'll just say about cloud, I'm not an expert in cloud security infrastructure, but when people say, "Oh, it's in the cloud," everyone's like, "Okay, well, I'm fine." There's a kind of a lack of, I don't know, knowledge of what is really secure up there, and how can you be attacked from that perspective. I know that, and obviously there's some fairly strong cloud security app providers out there that have emerged.
Ron or John, would you all like to add anything to what Frank said? No.
I think he did a good job of highlighting a lot of the issues, and maybe just layering his last answer onto this. If you don't know what you're doing or don't have somebody that is a security expert, it behooves you to go and get one. They're not that expensive to engage, and it's more than insurance. It really is, securing something that you otherwise would have. I mean, people don't have houses without smoke detectors or fire alarms. We need to have that same attitude for the kind of application security that we have today.
So for your clientele, has there been any laws that has impacted how they've been doing things and have asked you to actually help them restructure their information system in order to comply with this certain law?
Well, I'll just address,
so I can.
Go ahead, Ron. Go ahead.
All right, I'll go first this time. Yeah, we definitely have. We've seen people on the medical side with HIPAA high tech. It's incumbent on them to protect the devices, the patient data. It's interesting that most people will not realize how many devices are connected in this kind of world. And each one of those represents a place of compromise, a point of compromise. So understanding what the rules and laws are, and also what it impacts. So as an example, in the GDPR, as we know that rolled out a couple of years ago, we were working with a company that is US-based, but they had one acquisition from Amsterdam, and so they had to take on all of the GDPR throughout the entire organization, the data flow, the data security, storing it secured. Frank, you mentioned, encryption and making sure that both the communications, data in flight, and data at rest were secured. And so these, again, these are laws that are fairly wide-reaching. GDPR is something that has teeth. The HIPAA high-tech, most of the infractions tend not to bring up any kind of major, major element for, what kind of costs are associated with some kind of breach or compromise. But GDPR is huge, up to 4% of your of the income, which is, like I say, tremendous, especially when you're working as a U.S. company abroad. New York DFS, the financial space, is the pattern that I think we're going to see around the country. And so again, people are changing necessarily what they're doing, mostly around the data at rest and data in flight, but also around the applications and the application security, Frank, as you mentioned. So.
Yeah, I guess, I guess the one recommendation is you hire somebody like Sal, because this is a complicated area. That's all I can say. Every vertical has its own set of laws. You got fintech laws, you got healthcare laws, and then if you're doing business in various states like California to start, you're going to have other laws around there. So, and clearly what California's done is going to leak into other states. So you're going to have state issues if you're doing business in those states. So it's gotten fairly complicated, probably going to get worse. So my only advice there is if you're in a specific vertical, make sure you understand all the laws that relate specifically to you, and find yourself someone, a really good advisor, attorney who can help you guide through and get ahead of some of these things that are coming down the road.
Okay. One of the other things that, as we were talking in preparation for this, just one of the interesting laws that really does, again, have quite a wide reach if it comes to pass, is around the requirement for encrypting services, encrypting devices, and a request for a way in, a back door, as they say. And so the ability for the company to make sure that they're doing what they need to do in the states and in the countries that they're working within, you need to know that, or you're going to be at odds with the law. So.
Sal, what's your, just why don't you chime in a little bit here as to the complexity of all this? It's going to only get worse, I think, in my view, but I'm curious of your view.
Just from a legal point of view, I do find that American privacy law is one of the most complex regimes in the United States, just because it's very sectorial. Like you were saying, Frank, you have the fintech area, you have the healthcare, you have the educational area. They each have their own federal law that may apply, but then you also have 54 states and territories that have privacy laws themselves that you kind of have to comply with. And a lot of people talk about California and CCPA because it really changed the landscape of American privacy law. But I do think one privacy law that is kind of overlooked a lot of time is Massachusetts, where you have to have the written information, the security program, where if you only have one Massachusetts resident's information, you must change your system to comply with Massachusetts law, which is very astounding to a lot of my clients when I advise them of that. And, the California residents just passed a new privacy amendment to their constitution. So this area is only going to get more complex. And a lot of places are hiring and looking for more data privacy attorneys, but this is a new area that a lot of people are not fluent in yet. So, like you always saying, we need, saying earlier, we need more bodies. We need more people who know what's going on. So I would say that this has been a very complex area that is changing every single day. So with that being said, I was wondering, do you all have any topics that you all think that are commonly misunderstood by your clients, that is repetitive? Ron?
So one of the things that we hear over and over is quantum computing. Our clientele may be a little bit different from others. Again, we're mostly on the critical national infrastructure side, but you read it in the newspaper, the local newspaper, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and how quantum computers are coming. We see all kinds of descriptions from IBM and Google and all that. But the point is they reach a conclusion that a quantum computer will be able to destroy the kind of security that you build up through cryptography. Then the next emotional response tends to be, oh, well, then I'm just going to wait for a quantum computer. I'm not going to do anything now because whatever I do is going to be compromised, so we'll just wait. But just recently, the NSA has put out a note, as well as NIST, the National Institutes of Science and Technology, which is under Department of Commerce, and National Academies of Engineering and Science, have declared that there are several options today. It's available today. We don't have to wait a decade or three for a quantum computer, but we can do something today that is what they call quantum compute resistant, QCR. And I think that this is what people should be understanding and exploiting if, in fact, they are in it themselves. Hopefully, their trusted advisors are aware of this. But, you know, we've worked with Congress, worked with other people that are trying to make laws, rules, legislation that will address this. But again, I want people to understand that there are perfectly good and valid solutions today, if you choose one, that is going to last for years, if not decades. And we have a great history, you know, that gives me the confidence that when I say decades, I truly mean decades. So that's one thing, you know, I'd like people to understand. And then this is almost orthogonal to that. We work with people who have a lot of sensors in their environment. It could be utilities, it could be the healthcare field, it could be a variety of things. But in the organization, and because of the long history that we've had with IT, information technology, versus OT, which is the operations technology, that we see almost a combustible point where the two factions, and that's an odd word for people that are on the same team rowing in the same direction, but oftentimes their goals appear to be different. The operations guys are just trying to keep the wheels on the bus. The IT guys, as we mentioned earlier, sometimes they go quite slowly or very conservative and just want to make sure that they can do the best thing that they are. Again, I hope and encourage and would love to see more understanding and interaction between the IT and the OT space and have them work together to formulate the solutions. And I think it's just a misunderstanding that people have that you can't work together or they're just so different. You know, securing a database is different than securing a manufacturing line. And fundamentally, that's not necessarily true. So again, I think we want to make sure that people have good cyber hygiene on all aspects of their platforms, of their organization. We know historically, as an example, the Target breach came in through an HVAC contractor. And so making sure that we understand that, making sure that we understand how things work together, and that there aren't those people over there and those people over there. They actually are in the same space that intersects, and you must coordinate and work together. So those are the two things I see almost every opportunity that we have.
I agree. By 2025, they say that there will be over 25 billion internet connected devices embedded into objects, ranging from very small object to systems on the factory floors. And it is very important. And how to keep the industrial Internet of Things secure is getting more and more important, because the industry just focuses on the network, simple network, easy to manage, but there's a trend that they do not focus on making the things secure. So it is very important to continually invest and testing and explore potential vulnerabilities of IoT's Internet of Things to make the cyberspace secure.
So global cybersecurity is said to exceed $1 trillion between the years 2021 and 2025. With that being said, what are your cybersecurity clients looking for? Or I guess the better question should be, what should they be looking for moving into the next, decade?
So I'll get started, Sal, if that's okay. For us, what we see is that the customers are looking for something that it has the broadest coverage with the least amount of work. It's not that they're lazy, it's the recognition that it is so sophisticated. There are so many different things that they need to keep on top of, that they're looking for something instead of just a whole bevy of things that can really get in and do a good job. Less for them to manage. And again, it's not that they're lazy, it's just that they would like the solutions to take care of the problems, know the environment, be able to respond to a changing environment, be able to respond to a changing threat vector. And so we see a lot of companies that are putting their efforts into either implementing or selling, depending upon which side you're on, that kind of a solution. And it isn't, again, it's not so much that it's holistic, but the fact that it is dynamic and that it can change with the environment, or more simply, it can secure a wide variety or heterogeneous style environment without constant human intervention or interaction. So, I think that seems to me to be what the holy grail is. On the medical side, we see people, I know we talked about this a little bit, but we start out with, they don't want any of their devices to do any harm. It would be terrible for them to have a compromised system do harm to a patient. Then the next thing they tend to look for is the patient data. They're required by HIPAA, high-tech laws and associated laws. And then, really thinking beyond that, just sort of their operations. Where an enterprise is different. An enterprise, the first thing they think about typically is securing the protection of the customer data. Then they move on to some of the intellectual property from the organization, and then some of the other corporate issues. And then a manufacturing, I'll go back to that one thing, just having the understanding that OT and IT exist within the enterprise and need to be integrated. And again, most of the organizations don't know how to do that. They don't even know what devices they have. So the first thing they have to do is just take stock of what the devices are. And getting back to the question about working from home, that makes it ever more challenging and frustrating because you just can't really take good stock. You have to. You do the you make the measurements, you make the maps, you understand what's out there as best as you can, and act accordingly. So I'll take a breath there.
I'll take a little bit different angle there. I mean, I think a lot of the companies out there are looking for expertise. They want thought leadership. They want people who know what's ahead of the game, so that they're looking at some new technologies that are better, different, etc. I think they all also want to know, okay, I've spent millions of dollars or $100,000 on this infrastructure. Is this working? I'm still going to get breached. And if the other thing would be, if I do get breached, do I have the people around, the plans, the processes in place to remediate it and do what I need to do to fix it? So there's just a big void in people in this space today, and I think that and looking forward out in the next several years, I think it's going to be a real issue. And as these issues get more complex and your systems get more dispersed, such as IoT, they need more horsepower and firms around them that can help guide them people through this cyber mess that we've created. So.
Yes, if I may add some more regarding enterprise-related cybersecurity needs, I think that homogeneous cybersecurity services will be needed for streamlined cyber attack mitigation services. And Gartner, in case of Gartner, strategic planning assumptions indicate that by 2024, most of the cloud-based service providing companies will be using multi-cloud-based services. So there will be need for intensive cybersecurity related services, logically provided on the same security data plane. So this may be a big challenge for both cybersecurity clients and solution providers, I think, because the clients will be requesting and expecting that the cybersecurity services will be immediately started upon the time when it gets applied. And when the detection occurs and the cybersecurity attack, as soon as possible, the security mitigation should start. And also clients expect that the attacks should be blocked when detected by the security measures like DDoS mitigation and web firewall services. And also at the same time, the report for the mitigation results should be sent to the users and security operators. And I think for this, the cybersecurity users will need to use combined security solutions, physically or functionally, including DDoS or web firewall. And I heard that there are more than 200 cybersecurity solutions in the market. And the new APIs emerging every day, and there are more vulnerabilities regarding zero-day attacks, and we should be very well prepared for that. And security solution clients are expecting all these coming in a very near future and safely for the safer network, I think.
Thank you for that. I want to leave a couple of minutes to answer some questions that we've received before and during the program. Taylor, would you just like me to ask the questions, or would you like to take over?
No, if you have access, feel free.
All right, sounds good. These questions are from Brenda McNaughton. with ATR Thrive, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your last name. Her first question is, how do you know if your information is secure with so many fraudulent people contacting you for the same service?
Good question. You know, you do need to, I mean, it goes back to this kind of third party risk. I mean, you got a lot of people, you kind of, there's kind of a optimism around security that things are secure and people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I think you have to ask a lot of questions about your vendors and, you know, what policies do they have in place? You know, they SOC compliant. I mean, any number of things you could ask from your outsource, you know, people that your outsource vendors. But you got to do a little more research. Don't assume they're doing everything they need to be doing. You can, you know, find out if they've had any issues themselves. But it takes some due diligence on your part. You know, do they have certain policies in place and things like that? So it just takes some work on your part to see what they're doing, but don't assume that they have their house in order either. It's one of our problems out there. I think everyone thinks, you know, my vendor has everything secure when they don't. So.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Frank. And I think we're starting to see products out there that are in that space exactly. MasterCard, as an example, has a product. I think it's called Risk Recon. I'm not shilling for it. I'm just saying it's the kind of thing that you can ask them, how are they doing, my vendors? Not how am I doing? We know there's a lot of people you could hire for that. But this is an approach to say, okay, I'm connected to vendor X, vendor Y, and vendor Z. And this will give you an assessment of how you're doing based on the other ones that you're talking to. As I mentioned, the Target breach we know came in through an HVAC contractor. And so obviously they weren't very cyber secure. And maybe with this kind of approach, you could get some of those questions answered. So that's a great point, Frank.
And Brenda's second question is, what cybersecurity companies have the best ratings for reliability?
Yeah, I'm not sure what she's trying to address there. You know, obviously one of our problems is there's a whole lot of cybersecurity businesses out there, and it's very complicated. So I don't know, you know, for Chris, is she a firewall vendor or a, you know, endpoint provider or you know, an MSSP. So I'm not sure what she's addressing. You know, because it's very complicated out there. It's one of our problems is what technologies do you adopt? You have obviously well-established vendors that have been around for a while, and then you have some new ones coming up that are, you know, that are different and exciting. And so it's one of the challenges. You know, these environments are very complex. I mean, some of the big enterprise, they could have 20, 30, 40 different types of technologies that don't interact, and the data's in silos. So it's very complicated. So I have a hard time answering the question. I don't know exactly what specific, you know, what she's really saying, but you know, there are MSSPs. There's a top, you know, 100 MSSPs. And obviously you can do some research on top firewall vendors, but I have a hard time answering the question because there's a lot of different angles to it.
May I say the names of companies?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. Well, I think the Palo Alto Networks provides a good solution for network security, ranging from every, you know, a sector of firewall and web firewall, and, you know, securing the service products, and also they also provide you know, products, also physical product servers, and also services too. And also the company called Imperva, I think they got a good rating from Gartner's, rating. So those two companies, one company is a service provider. I think Imperva is a good one. And I also proposed that maybe Palo Alto Network Solutions good for using as a service in the cloud, and also some physical servers at enterprise and local buildings, I think.
Well, I wanted to let you all know that Brenda said thank you. And she also told you, Frank, that she understands what you mean, and thank you for that. With that being said, I just want to thank all our panelists for participating today and giving insight based on your role. I can honestly say I appreciate learning more about it from a technical side. Yeah.
Let me, if I could add one more thing before we conclude that we didn't really address. The one thing I'd recommend who's participating here, but for all your companies out there, be it if you're a small business or medium-sized business, you really need to have a cyber plan in place, especially for if you are attacked. I've seen it way too often. People are not prepared for if something were to happen. So you need to have cyber policies in place. You have your advisors lined up that if something happens, your lawyer, your remediation partner. You really need to know what to do, because I've seen it way too often where something does happen and people do not know what to do. And time is not at your side if you have, ransomware or some sort of data leak or something that happens. So I would encourage everyone to spend a little time thinking about, their plan if something were to happen.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining. Thank you to Frank, Ron, John, and Sal for taking this time to talk everything cybersecurity. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really
Thank you.
appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye,
Yep.
everybody.
All right.
Have a great day.